Shelter was never meant to feel like a lottery ticket, yet by mid 2025 an ordinary salary in Berlin, Toronto or Sydney hemorrhages more than 40% of take-home pay just to keep a roof overhead. Across the 38 OECD economies, house price-to-income ratios have climbed over 40% above their 2015 baseline, an astonishing repricing of something once considered a middle-class certainty. 3 to 5 extra years of earnings now disappear into down payments that would have covered the full purchase price for the same floor space a decade ago. Behind the statistics is a crushing reality. 2.8 billion people worldwide endure some form of inadequate housing, and more than a billion of them squat in informal settlements, patched together places with no legal tenure and scant infrastructure. The structural deficit is gigantically outsized. Analysts put the shortfall in emerging economies alone at roughly 268 million units, enough concrete, timber and steel to add 100,000 new homes every single day between now and 2030, a target so enormous it borders on science fiction. The math makes one thing clear: markets cannot build fast enough, and governments no longer build at all. Easy money papered over the Gulf for a decade. Zero and negative interest rates across Europe, North America and parts of East Asia inflated mortgages far faster than bulldozers could pour foundations. When central banks finally lifted rates to tackle pandemic-era inflation, borrowing costs doubled almost overnight. New loans on 10-year German fixed rates that once printed below 2% now settle above 4%. The average euro area buyer can afford 30% less floor space than 3 years ago, even before counting rising energy costs. Supply, meanwhile, is freezing. Germany, a country that prides itself on engineering discipline, approved just 215,900 new homes in 2024, the lowest figure since 2010 and barely half the government's own target of 400,000. Developers blame financing costs, wage shortages and a labyrinthine planning code that measures balcony rail heights to the millimeter while entire city blocks sit undeveloped. The inevitable result is rising rents. Munich families now devote entire secondary incomes merely to hold on to mid-century walk-ups, while Berlin's renters watch egalitarian dreams crumble into bidding wars. Across the Atlantic the narrative sounds familiar but louder. The typical US home now commands a price near $366,000, generating a monthly mortgage near $1,900 on 20% down. A household must earn roughly $77,000 to keep payments in the classic, affordable band. That bar towers over the median income of first-time buyers in dozens of states. Researchers calculate the United States remains at least 1.5 million units short of a balanced market, half in for-sale stock, half in rentals. Every missing front door pushes another family into leases, where institutional landlords compete with cash-rich retirees to snap up single-family houses. Asking rents for those homes now sit more than 40% above pre-COVID levels, and each renewal letter nudges another tenant toward a motel, a parental spare room or the streets. Canada, fueled by record immigration and chronically slow permitting, cannot keep up either. Even after a burst of new apartment completions, the purpose-built vacancy rate in major centers sits at a tight 2.2%, better than last year's crisis low but still below a healthy market's mark. New arrivals queue for open houses that resemble flash sales. Landlords collect application packages thicker than mortgage dossiers. Head south and east and the story scarcely improves. Australia's National Housing Supply and Affordability Council warns of a 262,000 dwelling hole, even after a federal accord promised 1.2 million new homes by 2029. Construction completions slump while population soars, vacancy rates in Sydney and Brisbane hover below 2%, and ordinary renters learn the grim Australian shorthand, rent bidding, where hopefuls auction one another up in $20 increments at the door. Luxury sectors defy gravity. Bubble risk indices still flag Miami, Tokyo and Zurich as exuberant, even though speculative froth has drained from suburban cul-de-sacs elsewhere. Wealthy global citizens, insulated from rate spikes and hungry for inflation hedges, collect trophy penthouses the way art patrons collect canvases, leaving mid-income earners stranded in a shrinking middle ground. China, famous for ghost cities a decade ago, now confronts the opposite, a chill. Real estate investment dropped more than 10% last year, yet even with cranes idling, prices in Tier 1 cities refused to fall enough to meet local wages. Developers, starved of pre-sales, sweep construction dust off showroom marble and wonder whether regulators will let them fail. Prospective buyers wait on the sidelines fearing half-finished skeletons. State media urges patience, but patience does not pour concrete. Smaller European states feel the crisis through rents rather than prices. In Dublin, average advertised rents have smashed the €2,300 line. Couples on respectable tech salaries now flat share like students or commute from counties once considered weekly holiday countryside. Copenhagen, powered by a booming clean tech scene, lists two-bed flats above 15,000 Danish kroner, a figure once reserved for executive relocations but now attached to apartments with IKEA basics and no parking. Everywhere the same bottlenecks choke supply, zoning codes that treat four-story buildings as skyscrapers, environmental reviews that sprawl to thousands of pages, construction labor forces graying faster than carpenters can be apprenticed, and input costs that jump with every global shock. Politicians turn to rent caps or inclusionary zoning, which shield existing tenants yet scare off future builders. Even well-intended energy efficiency standards add 10% to upfront budgets that cautious lenders already view with skepticism. The more earnest the regulation, the slower the backhoes roll. Rising interest rates twist the knife. Millions of borrowers in Europe and North America who captured 1-point-something% mortgages in 2021 will reset into 3 or 4% territory by 2026. Each reset widens a disposable income crater. Some owners will sell, but unless mass listings swamp markets, and they rarely do in orderly economies, the net effect is simply a bigger rental crush. The affordability burden migrates like a silent infection from stressed homeowner to freshly stressed tenant. For renters, the burden is already acute. Median asking rents in the United States demand incomes north of $80,000 to stay within the 30% rule, a threshold only a minority of single earners breach. British statistics tell a parallel story. Average renters now devote 31% of pay to keep keys, up from 23% 10 years ago, and Londoners blow past 40% without blinking. Savings evaporate, down payment dreams dissolve, adulthood milestones slip further into the fog. Social consequences unfurl slowly but unmistakably. Fertility rates slide as couples delay children into ever later years. Inner city school enrollments drop, forcing municipalities to merge campuses even while outer suburbs scramble to build new ones. Commutes lengthen, robbing workers of daylight and polluting air. Employers struggle to fill mid-salary roles because potential hires cannot reconcile wages with rent. Protests ignite in unexpected places. Teachers in Lisbon, nurses in Vancouver, junior doctors in Seoul, all cite housing as a top grievance. Governments experiment around the edges. Sweden's off-site modular factories slice build times by 30% and labor hours by 40%, yet municipal councils still argue over parking minimums. France offers generous tax abatements to developers who promise mid-market rents for 2 decades, but not enough builders bite. Canada dangles per-door bonuses to municipalities that upzone single-family streets. Neighborhood lawsuits blossom overnight. Environmental reality complicates matters further. Europe mandates thick insulation and triple glazing, excellent for carbon targets, brutal for spreadsheets. Coastal Australia and the southeastern United States watch insurance premiums race so fast that insurers quit entire zip codes, and banks balk at issuing mortgages without coverage. Every new risk factor slices borrowing capacity, nudging buyers downmarket into an already overcrowded segment. Dreaming of a price crash is tempting, but central bankers load disorder. Their more likely path is paralysis, allow nominal prices to stagnate while inflation slowly eats into real values. For owners it feels like treading water, for outsiders, the shore never gets closer. Rents may plateau for a season, but the structural gap, millions of homes that simply do not exist, remains, preserving landlords' leverage. Thus housing divides into 2 civilizations. In the first, asset holders lock in yesterday's interest rates and tomorrow's appreciation. They refinance kitchens, install solar panels and watch equity sprout like vines. In the second, renters shuttle between ever smaller units, share bedrooms with toddlers, postpone medical degrees or migrate to second-tier cities whose affordability countdowns have only just begun. Remote work helps a lucky sliver, but most jobs stay stubbornly physical, tethered to hospitals, labs, ports and warehouses built long before remote dreams. This bifurcation rewrites financial behavior. Younger cohorts stash paychecks into index funds or cryptocurrencies, portable assets they can keep should their leases shift. Couples enter co-living arrangements sold as lifestyle communities, polite jargon for splitting rent 4 ways. Parents contemplate multi-generational homes they once associated with wartime frugality. Wealth transfers accelerate. Grandparents tap reverse mortgages so grandchildren can muster deposits, inadvertently concentrating ownership within family trees that already possess property. Solution blueprints circulate at policy summits, streamline permitting to 90-day windows, outlaw single-family zoning near transit, tax vacant land annually at its highest and best use, allow depreciation only when units are built, fund modular factories much as governments once underwrote shipyards, provide state-backed construction loans rather than buyer subsidies. Each idea wins applause, collects footnotes, then collides with local politics in which incumbents fear shade on gardens or traffic on streets. Yet history shows transformation is possible. Between 1945 and 1970, Western Europe doubled its housing stock with prefabricated panels, standardized floor plans and public financing that capped land speculation. Districts rose in months, unfancy yet solid, the substrate on which modern prosperity grew. Recreating that feat today would require digitized planning portals, zero-carbon prefab modules and fiscal incentives tied not to sale prices but to certificates of occupancy. Absent such resolve, the collapse of affordable housing will not look like wrecking balls or auctioneers. It will resemble a gentle but relentless tide, each wave washing another slice of the population farther from the shoreline of ownership and deeper into a rental undertow. Societies that once celebrated broad proprietorship will settle into a landed class and a perpetual tenant class. Streets will still sparkle in wealthier precincts, cafes will hum, cranes will hover, but most of the dwellings they summon will light up as investments, not homes. When shelter morphs into speculation, democracy itself can tilt. Public debates revolve less around budgets or foreign policy and more around square footage, rent contingencies and eviction moratoria. Ballots become referendums on housing anxiety rather than ideology. If that sounds exaggerated, remember that 2 centuries ago the right to vote was literally tied to owning property. History, with ironic symmetry, may be circling back. No single decree will restore affordability overnight. But every delayed permit, every oversized setback, every unaffordable energy code carries a hidden cost measured not in currency but in postponed children, unrehearsed dreams and undiscovered talent. Those intangible losses compound faster than mortgage interest, and they are much harder to refinance. The clock, in short, is louder than the hammers. Housing scarcity has transformed from a local headache into a planetary condition.